Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you, Swamiji Siddhayin, for inviting me here. A microphone, maybe. And before to give this lecture, I was thinking, because I have many lectures, I prepared for Shivananda Ashram starting 2008. And so I have many lectures saved in this computer. And I thought, should I show this one for you guys, or maybe I should do something else? Because this is my latest one. It's my discovery, and I don't know, because I get very excited about things related to the sacred architecture. So I hope you will get excited also, because somebody today during dinner said, no, just do it, because I said, maybe I will do something more practical. So when I sit would say, Olga, give something practical to people, how to sleep, where to sit, because people need that. But I am always gravitating to these abstract ideas which fascinate me the most. So I hope you will find it interesting. So this lecture is about inspired. So I opened a business called Inspired Interiors for Prosperity and Bliss by Olga Mandodari. And so the latest discovery for me was when we went, I took my mother, she's 83 years old, to Virginia. There are hot springs there. If you know, there is a place, there is a pool, George Washington, I think it was his pool there. So there is a big resort, and so they have warm springs and hot springs. And you go there, pay $25 for an hour, and you can enjoy. Of course, in Colorado, you go for free, and we sit whole day. And that's okay. That's good. Yeah, but here it's more business. So I thought, okay, I'll take my mom because she has some health issues, and I thought maybe she could float there for Mother's Day weekend. So we went, my daughter, myself, Hank, my husband, my mother, and our crazy dog. So we went there, and it was a very nice evening. So we float, and I sat for free in the spring which goes around there. I thought, why not? So next day, it was raining, and we thought, what should we do? And Julia said, Mom, there is one museum opened, and it's opened once a month on Saturday, first Saturday of the month. And they opened after winter, first time, but it's 1 hour driving from here. We thought, let's just go. So we drove there, and it's Waynesboro, Virginia. And the museum was called Walter Russel Museum. I don't know if anybody of you heard this name, Walter Russel. I didn't know either. I was not born here, but I thought maybe because I'm only 30 years in the United States, maybe that's why I don't know. But apparently, not everybody knows about this man. But he was a true Renaissance man, and what I discovered, it just blew my mind. So what I'm trying to explain here, that how does it all relate to Vastu Shastra? When I mentioned yesterday, when I was first time in India, Dr. Stapati gave me a book called Aintiram, and it's cosmology. And he received that information from Tanjavur, Saraswati Mahal Library, from one old man. So there is no connection between these two people. Walter Russell, who was American, he was born in Boston, and in 1931 he became known for his work, but he was born in 1800. So there is not really a connection between the Indian teachings of Vedanta and what he was teaching. And his organization, they have now philosophy.org, if you would be interested to check it out. But so we went there, they opened the door, there was a beautiful music playing, a couple, husband and wife, they were playing some instruments. One was a violin, and another instrument, I don't know, I think a clavichord. But it was so beautiful, nobody was there, it was only myself, my daughter, my mother, and I had to translate to her also, whatever the guide was telling us, and So nobody was there, and I couldn't focus because I had to translate also. So, and I thought, I'll go back again to that place. But I bought all the books, what I could buy, and I started reading them. And the reason I bought his books, because as soon as was, the one is this one, and if you will be interested to check it out after lecture. So he had a picture there, and it says cube and the circle are the same on energy level. I was like, wow, that's interesting, because Dr. Stapati was constantly telling us that cube is this unit of energy. It's like a building block of the universe. It's a subtle particle of energy, of consciousness. And when we start thinking, or universe starts thinking, then it spins, and it becomes a sphere from the spin, self-spin. And spinning, it's being self-aware, awareness. So that's kind of like the mechanics of divine universe. So then I know this Vastu Purusha mandala, which is 8x8 energy grid, which gets organized in a space, and that's what we use in design. And in this book, he said 64 is a very important number, and 8x8 is 64. So I was like, wow, this is something really interesting here is going on. And then I remembered when I was in Siberia, I was giving my lecture, it was probably 2009. I went to Omsk, and it's Omsk. Yeah, Aska is a suffix we add in Russian words. So the city is Om, actually. And some rivers around have Sanskrit names. And people, local people, they believe that before the Ice Age, it was that Vedic civilization there. That's it. That's how they think. That's possible. And so because the Sanskrit names of rivers all tell you something, yeah, that's not random. So anyhow, I was there, and I was under this impression of this amazing scripture, Aintiram. I was studying it, and I was translating it at my free time. So I went there, and people came. They had no clue what it is, but they came, they took off work. So I was giving them seminars, and I said, Dr. Stapati on the phone. He's in India, I'm in Siberia. And I said, Dr. Stapati, we're going to have a celebration of Aintiram and Mayan's birthday, because it was on March 5th, he told me. And I was there. He sent from India, from Chennai to Omsk, a package of this brochures for everybody who came to listen to my lecture. And he paid $700 in India. That's a lot of money, even in America, to send a package of this brochure, like 15 brochures, with some courier, to get this to the lecture to the Mayan's birthday. So, and when I went to India, his people said, you know, he spent so much money sending to you this. I said, really, I didn't know this, like, so expensive. Yes, because you asked for the seminars. I felt so bad about it. But I said, madam, this is the most important. The money are not important. He would spend the last money on things like that. So this Aintiram, I was reading, and I was illustrating it, and I will show you some illustrations from there. So there is basically paragraphs describing how universe functions, and how mind, universal mind functions. And that was amazing for me. Just like really, I was just, I don't know, it's just like in heaven, reading all this information and making my diagrams. So he even published my first booklet, and that's why I was making these illustrations. So that was laying in my bookcase for years, now many years, so 2007. So then, this year, in Mother's Day weekend, yeah, so I found this museum, and I'm looking at the illustrations of which this man was doing. He was actually an artist, well-known artist, and his paintings were exhibited in France, and he got some prizes. He was an architect, and he discovered 2 chemical elements in periodic system having only 7 grades. How did he do it? So that is very interesting. This is him. It's a beautiful face, yeah. So he was born in Boston on May 19th, 1871. and he passed away in 1963, like Swami Shivananda, the same year. So in May of 1921, he had a spiritual experience. He called it cosmic illumination. But before that, when he was about 7 years old, he had near-death experience. He had some disease as a child, and he died. So 2 doctors pronounced him dead when he was a kid, and so several minutes he was gone. Then he came back, and so he tried to explain to his parents that he had divine communion with God. He said, I spoke to God, but they didn't believe him. He was a child. So from that age, every year, he would have a communion with God on his birthday, and he would go to forest. He said, only in the forest, only around big trees, where the nature is pristine, you could communicate with divine. So he would go there and have his own kind of communication. And then he started receiving very interesting messages. So when he was almost 50 years old, he went again to the forest, and he went into the spiritual trance for 39 days. So his wife at that time, she called psychiatrists to invite them and to see what is going on with her husband too. She said he is crazy, but he was writing down what he was receiving. So he wrote this book called The Message of the Divine Iliad. And that's where he said, I was told by God, he said it was Christ's consciousness. He was Christian. So I was told to write down exactly word by word what I received and deliver this to people. So he wrote it down, and not everybody would listen to that, because during that time it was very revolutionary, actually, to compare to Orthodoxy and Christianity, the way people would practice religion. This was totally different. So when he was 77 years old, he received a phone call from this woman. Her name was Grace Cook. She was British. And so she was, because he published his books, and she was able to read it. So she called him and she started talking to him, and he said, wait a minute. It's actually in his diary. I was reading it. He said, who are you? So she introduced herself. He said, where are you? She said, I'm in England. He said, you know your voice, I know your voice. You were talking to me for already decades. She said, really? He said, come here. So she flew to the United States. They met, and then they married. She was 44, he was 77. And they were, basically the marriage was based on the spiritual movement, because she was painting from her childhood, beautiful paintings, but she was doing a totally different type of work. And he was an artist, he was a painter, and then he became a sculptor. He knew presidents of the United States of that time, he knew Edison, he knew Tesla. So when he shared with Tesla what he was given, Tesla told him, hide this for 1,000 years, people are not ready for this. So, but he published it already. So Grace Cook, she changed her name to Walter Russel after a Buddhist monk. So they were living together, they organized organization, philosophy, basically spiritual philosophy. And so when I went to the museum, I was looking at everything what he did. I mean, architecture in New York, books, paintings of famous people, portraits, he became very popular. 2 chemical elements, I mean, he discovered, how did he do it? So he said to scientists, because before they would disregard whatever he was trying to bring to people, the knowledge. They said, you're an artist, continue your artistry, okay? Don't get into science. We are scientists. So like, okay, he started actually illustrating what was given to him. And that became more interesting to science because his ideas, not his, what he was given, were really revolutionary for that time. And he wrote to Einstein, but he ignored. And he wrote to some other prominent scientists about black holes. He was given that information, and basically he was ignored. Then one scientist, he was, I think it was not the Boston, I think it's New York, in New York, because he tried to deliver his message from divine, the knowledge he received to modern scientists. But because, they're scientists, they're big egos, of course, so they would ignore. So this gentleman, it was 1931, that is New York University, Department of Physics. He wrote him a letter, basically very kind letter, continue your artistry, and maybe you could design in art, show illustrations to people, maybe you will be able to persuade this way. That's what he was doing. So this museum, they have amazing archives of his work. When I saw his diagrams, that is just shook my entire being, and I'm going to show you. So by the way, after the museum, we were told, do you want to go to see where he lived with Walter Russel? It's 5 minutes from here. I said, of course I would like to see where he lived. So apparently they were traveling in the United States looking for a place where to live, and they couldn't find something. She was a wealthy woman, and so she sold a lot of stuff in England, moved here. So they found this amazing building, and that building belonged to, it's called Shivananda Palace. It is Italian Renaissance villa, built in 1912 by millionaire and philanthrope James Dooley and Sarah Dooley, his wife. They had no children, but so they would they would invite children and would just I guess give some food around, and so it was inhabited because they would come only during summertime, and then when they died, nobody was there. So when Walter Russel and Walter Russel went there, it was a cow grazing inside of the building, and it was manure this much. And so they cleaned it all, but because they saw this amazingly beautiful Tiffany window, which is the biggest in the United States. So this was actually this wife of this millionaire. For her, he made this gift. So that is so beautiful. Whenever, if you have a chance, go there because it's a magic place. And nobody lives there. So when they both passed away, Walter Russel and Walter Russel, so it's just kind of like, it still belongs to that family. They don't want to sell it, but they don't do anything with it as well because it takes millions of dollars to renovate. But the story is about, so Shivananda, it's from Swan, because the wife of the millionaire guy, she liked swans. So anyway, so we went there, we kind of felt the spirit of that place and the museum and all these books I had with me. I was like, oh my God. And I will show you experiment they showed to me during that visit in the museum. So I started, before going to sleep, I started reading this, the Iliad, messages from the divine. One time I just couldn't sleep because I woke up my husband, I said, listen, this is exactly like in Aintiram. He said, really? I said, yes, listen. He said, okay, that's okay, you continue reading. Let me sleep. It was 1:30 in the morning. Why I couldn't sleep? And so I wanted to share with you, because he said God is light. And he said, so everything is continuation of my light and my rhythmic vibration. And today during this class I was giving, I was talking for 2 hours about rhythmic vibration. Because rhythm is actually a part of form generation. If energy is not having a rhythmic vibration, it's a chaos. So if there is chaos, you cannot have form. In order to create form, you have to have a pattern, and it should have some basically base. The pattern should have a sturdy form. So any form visual to our eyes has energy inside, which is throbbing. and pulsating. That is divine life, nothing else. So form cannot exist without this throbbing energy, consciousness. So that's why we're part of the divine, yeah? So we're here discovering through Vedanta. So I basically wanted to quote here. So this is him, Walter Russel. He is showing diagrams. And by the way, how he discovered these two periodic system elements of periodic system Mendeleev table. At the last two ones, I think after that it was more discoveries, but I mean, he predicted them, he described them, and they were found. So they gave him a doctorate degree because it was like really unheard of that the person without education, formal education, was able to do it. So he was suggested to do experiments, but he said, no, I am not a scientist, it's not mine, it was given to me by Christ. He would say, Christ gave it to me. so this is everything is parenthesis because it's the messages he received, and he was told not to change anything. It's kind of like old English. So come unto me in my high heavens, ye who are burdened of the earth, and find rest, for I am rest. So Brahma Bindu in Vastu Shastra is a point of rest, of stillness. So I was like, wow. So I started to connect the dots, basically. Brahma Bindu, rest. And I am love. That's what Vedanta is teaching us, right? Everything is made from love. You cannot create beauty with hatred. You just can't. It's not happening. So you need to be in love in order to create beauty. So he said, I am love, and all the unchanging qualities which my thinking divides into paired qualities of sex-conditioned extensions of my light, which ever seek the rest in me from which they sprung. So what the idea is here that in the spiritual world there is no gender, but as soon as the manifestation starts, then gender is created for diversity. And I remember Dr. Stapati said one time, Madam, do you know that the universe is constantly making love? I was like, well, no, I don't know. And I was taught in yoga, don't even think about it. And so he said, yes, that's universe because it's creating all the time, giving birth to new and new life objects of consciousness. So that's love. Okay, and next, since I'm peace, all moving things that are my extension must manifest my balance in themselves. So balance is beauty. So balance is, again, it's a rhythmic pulsing which creates forms. And if there is no balance there, you can't create and sustain form without balance, balanced vibration of the essence. So it's kind of uncovering itself when you read this. And again, maybe for somebody who didn't do it for 18 years, it's not clear. But for me, it was like a light bulb. So the spreading light of my thought multiplies the unity of my knowledge into multitudes in order to become the mother of their formed bodies as matrix images created in my knowledge. That was Vastu Purusha Mandala. So maybe it's not clear for you, I will explain. Because matrix is the grid pattern. Because according to the Vastu Shastra, everything is matrix. So it's a grid pattern with its own inner structure, and that pattern can be applied to huge objects like universe, or to this small space, or human body, or mosquito. Everybody has a grid pattern. And actually it's the same. It's just the vibration is different based on the level of consciousness, of evolution of consciousness. That's why we can come from lower kind of life conscious beings to higher. That's why they say we're kind of the top of creation, because we can realize in this body who we truly are. Yeah? By the way, about mosquitoes, you know that many years ago, about maybe 12 years ago, it was a discovery done in California. that mosquitoes can mate only when they get into the resonance. What kind of resonance? Maybe you heard sometimes when there are lots of mosquitoes flying. Sometimes you hear the sound like this, not when they just basically flying with their wings and making the sound, but it's a deeper sound, so that they're mating actually. So what they do, they create a resonance. Male mosquito and female mosquito, they vibrate their wings in order to resonate with each other, and then they can only mate. So the kundalini awakens only when the resonance is happening in the energies. So the universe is working the same way. That's why yogis, if they awaken kundalini, they bring it up here, not at the lower level, right? So this, just like you see their patterns of creativity, of giving birth to new life is the same, but it's at different levels. So let's move forward here. So here, for moving things of clay, forever move, knowing that not that rest centers, okay, maybe you guys hear it. So for moving things of clay, forever move, knowing not that rest centers, they're moving as rest centers, the shaft, the shaft which forever moves around its very source of rest, from which its motion springs. Can somebody read so it's clear in English?
For moving things of clay forever move, knowing not that rest centers their moving as rest centers the shaft, which forever moves around its very source of rest, from which it is its motion springs.
Okay, so clay. Why clay is here? Anybody heard about Popol Vuh? Okay, Native Americans' book of creation. All people were made from clay first. How interesting, yeah? So it's just kind of connection, yeah? Doesn't do anything with Vastu Shastra, but it is Native Americans' book. And it says Popol Vuh, it's their cosmology, and it says the first people were made from clay, then from corn, and then became as we are. So there is evolution also there. So what it's saying here, that there is a point of rest and there is a shaft. So in Vastu Shastra, the point of rest is this Brahma Bindu, and the shaft of light is Brahmastan. And that's where the divine light actually is vibrating. So as I mentioned here, the divine light is supposed to vibrate here where the columns are, but it can't, because the columns. So, but inside of us, we have that shaft of light. So that shaft of light, he's talking about it in its own way. So basically, I was reading this and I thought, oh my goodness, this is like basically a Aintiram. And, you know, they're in same idea is here. The extending light of my thinking multiplies the oneness of my knowing into many ones to mother them as formed bodies made in patterned images of my knowing. That is Vastu Purusha Mandala, if it's not clear. So the pattern of my thinking. So again, today I was explaining this to people in the class, that the universe starts basically total stillness, no thinking. Yeah, everything is only in potential. As soon as the thinking comes, it means that idea of creation came, and then the string appears, light beam of energy, divine thought, self-awareness. It starts spinning and emitting energy. So whenever you sit here and talk, you emit energy. And so inside of you, this Brahma Sutra, the string of light, that's your consciousness. That is a dance of Shiva. When you speak, you're like Shiva, basically, creating and dancing internally. So he is saying here that my knowing, it's what is in potential, which is not manifested yet. It's a wisdom, it's knowledge. But when I start thinking, I start manifesting. So knowing is not enough. In order to manifest something what you know, you have to start thinking about it. When you start thinking about it, then the process starts. Then the time starts, explosions like mini Big Bangs, and the universe is growing. So that was, for me, that was a revolution in my mind. And I decided to show you illustrations because that's easy when you see pictures. Why it's easy for us to understand when we have pictures. That was explained to me in India. When I was growing up, I grew up with my stepfather, and when my mother remarried, I was 8 years old. And I was kind of like a BC student. My mom worked late till 8 p.m. She would come home, I would boil potatoes for both of us, and I was afraid to turn on gas, the neighbor would come and help me, so that's how we lived like this. And when my mother married with my stepfather, my life changed. And he was an amazing man, and I must say that I owe to him my ability to learn, self-learning. He taught me first, you have to draw a picture of anything you don't understand. I said, how can I draw a picture of something I don't understand? He said, it doesn't matter, just draw, start drawing, start manifesting. So when I was doing that, and I'm doing this till now. I'm drawing pictures. When I don't understand, I start drawing them, and actually understanding comes. So why is that? Dr. Stapati explained to me. He said, madam, our mind doesn't work with words first. First, you see image. Image is, he said, it's Om light. Words are Om sound. So they go hand by hand. But first, you see the image, your imagination. And then you verbalize that, what you saw. So that is sound. So that's why if we have books illustrated, we understand the subject much faster, because that's the first symbol of our mind. Mind understand in symbols, in pictures. Then the words come. So that's why children, they like pictures, books with pictures, and they learn faster. That's why I think all the textbooks, they should be illustrated at maximum. Then we would learn much faster. So when I was reading Introduction into Aintiram, anybody can see this? It's on my website. So that actually, that was the most incredible for me when I draw that, because that was explanation of the stages of the universe, how it evolves from nothing into the universe, and how the consciousness of divine from nothingness, Sunyambaram, becomes concentrated because the thought comes. So the first point of concentration is Brahma Bindu. That's your central point here. It's a central point in the building. So that's concentrated energy of self-awareness. So then the thought is more developing, becoming more detailed. In order to create something, you have to really think about it, right? So that's why we write business plans, in order to create something, to achieve. So divine works that way. That's why we work that way. We only copying the divine laws of existence. If we violate, nothing works. So anyhow, so that point of creation is Brahma Bindu. So before it starts creating, it actually shrinks, and it's kind of like ready for jump. So shrinking, all these processes, they have Sanskrit names for that. So then it becomes basically from the desire of creation, I want to create that, yeah? So the spin comes, and the spinning is so fast, then actually it starts expanding this unit of energy of consciousness, and it explodes from happiness and joy and desire to create. So this is the diagrams here, explosion, and then by some divine thing, everything, whatever exploded, comes back into form, and it's a grid pattern. So Vastu Purusha Mandala. So here it's the same. If you will read carefully what is in this book of Divine Iliad, it says, I am the shaft of light. I'm this actually consciousness, like in Aintiram, Brahma Sutra, and I'm light, and this is light too. And it says, I am source of rest from which its motion springs. It's the same thing. So the Brahma Sutra appears, yeah, it's actually a vertical axis of the building. It's your vertical axis going through your spine. So it appears, the energy is like piercing through. That's why I say when the Kundalini awakens, it's not about Kundalini, but it's just an example. So if it goes through your all centers and it comes here, then you become enlightened. So you're basically merged with divine completely. So all your life energy kind of like springs up and merges. And so here this is the same, just a demonstration in geometry. So, and it says, so the motion springs. Before it was total stillness, but bliss. You don't want anything. That's we're like in constant motion now, but now we say it's enough. I want to go back to Brahma Bindu and I want to experience peace, right? And so we're a bit tired from this motion. So it says Vastu Purusha Mandala, because that's how do we connect Vastu Purusha Mandala with what is in this book? It says, light of my thinking multiplies the oneness of my knowing. So the knowing is actually the wisdom which exists by itself. It's a law of creation which will be manifested. Law of creation is peace, love, non-violence. Because nothing else is there. As I said, you cannot give birth out of hatred. You can only create out of love. So the source is love. So my knowing, so it's postulates of creation, they're existing. It's you can't touch it, but it's there. So in many into many ones, this many ones are us. We are the children of creation of God, So in many ones, and to mother them, Shakti, feminine principle. He didn't say father them, mother them. To mother them as formed bodies made in patterned images of my knowing. So Vastu Purusha Mandala is that pattern of design. So when we use this pattern of design, we actually recreate divine blissful forms. Because we follow, basically, we use what is there. We don't create something with our mind which has limitations. That's why this science is very important to know and to tell the architects. They have to pay attention because we violated so many rules on the planet. We basically disturb balance, natural balance of nature. That's why we have fires in Canada, tsunamis, earthquakes, because the balance